I was recently watching an interview with Mads Mikkelsen. He's the Danish actor who played Le Chiffre in Casino Royale. And he was talking about how ridiculous British politeness can be at times. There's the old joke of the reason why no British people survived the Titanic is because when it came to get on the lifeboats, they were all, "After you, sir, after you," and all of the Americans just jumped on. And it got me thinking, as a British person who lives in America, does British politeness sometimes go too far? I believe that politeness is one of the hallmarks of a gentleman, and I spend a lot of time talking about etiquette and manners on my channel. But sometimes, does politeness cross into passive aggressiveness? And can you be so polite that you're actually what we would call today more of a simp? So in today's video, I'm going to give you a few rules to keep in mind to help you strike the right balance between polite and well-mannered, yet still assertive, direct and strong. And I will be reflecting a lot on British politeness and British culture, and also some of the things that I've done to adapt to American culture, and even the things that I think British people actually get wrong about politeness. Hello, my name is James, and I am on a mission to create a generation of gentlemen. Rule number 1, stop overusing the word sorry. When I was in school, we had a German teacher from Germany, and she used to go absolutely ballistic at students always saying, "Sorry, sorry miss, sorry for that, sorry I forgot my homework." She goes, "Stop saying sorry. You use that word so much that it means nothing." And I think this is a real problem that British people have. Sorry has really lost its meaning in British culture, and it's just become a reflex. And I think that's partly because the word sorry is so short and easy to say. Now in German, for example, the word for sorry is Entschuldigung, much more complicated and more of a high-level effort word to say. And the truth is, the word sorry isn't always the most appropriate phrase to use. If you are simply squeezing by somebody in an elevator, "Excuse me" or "Pardon me" is much more effective, and it makes much more sense. You don't need to be sorry for getting out on your floor. Don't apologize just for existing. That's when we cross over into the simp territory. Words like "excuse me", "pardon me" are just as polite and even more effective. And if you genuinely do need to apologize and you have done something wrong, saying "I apologize" is actually a more sincere turn of phrase. The second rule is to be polite but direct. In an attempt to phrase things in a polite way and not seem too demanding, British people can often be very unclear and confusing in their communication. Brits often soften their statements by starting with phrases like "sorry but", or "I was wondering if maybe". And yes, I know this is a culturally ingrained thing, but especially when dealing with people from other cultures, it can just be downright confusing. And there is nothing polite about confusing people. So instead, I encourage you to practice what I call polite assertiveness. Let's take an office environment example. Instead of saying, "Sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you might be able to send the report at some point." That's so vague. Say something instead like, "Could you send me that report by 3 p.m? It's direct, but still courteous. When you hedge your sentence too much with the "sorry to bother yous", "I was wondering if you could", it's way too confusing. You need to state what you need clearly, but still be polite. And of course, say thank you when the task is fulfilled. A huge mistake British people make with politeness is that they are trying so hard to be nice that they actually slip into passive aggressiveness. British people will seem so polite on the surface, but deep inside they are actually seething with rage. And that's because British politeness does not always go in tandem with setting healthy boundaries and communicating. But it doesn't need to be this way. Communication is actually a very important aspect of politeness. And part of that is learning how to say no politely yet firmly. For example, if somebody asks a British person for a favor that they don't really want to do, The British person might say in response, "I'd love to help, but I'm really busy. Maybe I can squeeze it in." And inside they're just saying, "Don't say yes, don't say yes." But then, of course, how can the other person read your mind? And in the end, you'll end up taking on things and allowing people to overstep your boundaries, which creates all of this resentment inside and a very passive-aggressive personality. All you need to do instead is set a boundary politely yet firmly. Say, "I won't be able to do that, but I hope you find somebody who can help." To a British person, that might even seem a little bit rude, but honestly, there's nothing rude about that. You're actually saving everybody a lot of time and confusion by setting your boundary clearly. Now, just because you want to come across as assertive and confident, it doesn't mean you can't be friendly, and you by no means need to be aloof. One thing that I think British people are actually quite bad at is we like politeness and manners in a more formal sense with the words we use, but then when it comes to talking with strangers or just being friendly out of the goodness of our own hearts, we're not so good at that. One thing I noticed when I moved to the US is everywhere you go, it's all, "Have a nice day, how's your day going?" People are a lot more extroverted. And that's actually something I really appreciate about American culture. And simply by refining the way you communicate with your particular word choices and the way you structure your sentences, you can still have that refined elegance and manners of a British gentleman while being confident, assertive, and getting your needs met. So let me quickly recap my 3 rules to be a polite gentleman without being a simp. First, don't overuse the word sorry. Excuse me or pardon me will often work just as well. And if you do need to genuinely apologize and you've done something wrong, saying the words "I apologize" will mean a lot more than another token sorry. The second rule is to be polite yet direct. Instead of using phrases like "I was wondering if," "maybe you could," "sorry but," there is no need to soften your sentences with such niceties. Instead, use the common please and thank yous, yet still state what you need clearly. There's nothing polite about confusing people. And third, don't become passive-aggressive. In an attempt to be polite, don't allow others to push you around or overstep your boundaries, because if you do, all of that rage will bubble up inside you and you'll actually become a very unpleasant person to be around. Gentlemen, I would love to know what role politeness plays in your culture. Maybe you're on the East Coast or the West Coast. Maybe you're down in the South, renowned for its southern manners. Or perhaps you're somewhere in Europe or Asia or Latin America. Wherever you are in the world, I think it would be a fascinating discussion to see down in the comments what role politeness plays in your culture. Do you think you are more polite than the British, less polite? And what's something from your culture that you think perhaps people from other nations could learn from? I look forward to reading your responses and I'll see you in the next video.